Hello and welcome back. This isn't going to be a long hello, but someone let me hold her for a moment, so Zoe's here to say hello and happy Thanksgiving. So we'll get started in a minute. Look how beautiful you are on the screen. We're going to have a good day today, huh? Yep. Today is Thursday, November 28th, and it's Thanksgiving, so we are, oh, that was it. Here she goes. Okay. Okay. I've got Zoe hair all over me now. Okay. Alright, today we are reading chapter 22 of Lirael by Garth Nix. And oh my gosh, chapter 21 was so much fun to read. This chapter is much shorter. It took over 4 hours to get that reading uploaded last night. It took forever. I think that was my longest one so far, so this chapter is only roughly 7 pages, so I'll try to read slow, and I don't think this is going to be a half an hour read like yesterday, but let's get started. Chapter 22, Power of 3. The door at the far end of the bridge opened as soon as Lirael touched it. Once again, she felt charter magic flow into her, but it was not the friendly touch of the upper door, or the quiet recognition of the stone portal at the entrance to the rift. This one was more like a wary examination, followed by immediate, but not necessarily friendly, recognition. Under her hand, the dog shivered as the door swung open. Lirael felt the tremor and wondered why, till she caught the distinctive, corrosive scent of free magic. It was coming from somewhere ahead, strangely overlaid with charter magic that bound and contained it. Free magic, whispered Lirael, hesitating. But the dog continued to move forward, dragging her along. Reluctantly, Lirael followed her through the doorway. As soon as Lirael passed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her. In an instant, the roar of the river was cut off. So was the light from the charter-marked trail. It was dark, darker than any darkness Lirael had ever known, a true dark in which it was suddenly difficult to even imagine light. The darkness pressed upon Lirael, making her doubt her own senses. Only the dog's warm skin under her hand told her that she was still standing, that the room had not changed, and the floor had not tilted. "Don't move," whispered the dog, and Lirael felt a canine snout briefly press against her leg, as if the spoken warning weren't enough. The smell of free magic grew stronger. Lirael pinched her nose with one hand, trying not to breathe anything in, while her other hand went to the clockwork emergency mouse in her waistcoat pocket. Not that it was likely that even this clever device could find its way from here to the library. She could feel charter magic building, too, strong marks floating in the air like pollen, their usual internal light dampened. She could sense charter and free magic working together, winding and twisting about her, weaving some spell she couldn't even begin to identify. Fear began to knot in Lirael's stomach, slowly spreading to paralyze her lungs. She wanted to breathe, to force air slowly in and out, to calm herself with the steadiness of her own breath. But the air was heavy with strange magic, magic she could not, would not, breathe in. Then, lights began to sparkle in the air. Tiny, fragile balls of light made up of hundreds of hair-thin spines, like luminous dandelion clocks, wafting about on some breeze Lirael couldn't feel. With the lights, the taint of free magic abated. The charter magic began to strengthen, and Lirael took a slight, cautious breath. In the strangely mottled, constantly changing light, Lirael saw that she was in an octagonal chamber. A large room, but not of cold carved stone as she'd expected, here in the heart of the mountain. The walls were tilted in a delicate pattern of golden stars, towers, and silver keys. The ceiling was plastered and painted with a night sky, full of black, rain-fat clouds advancing upon 7 bright and shining stars. And there was carpet under her bare feet, Lirael realized, a deep blue carpet, soft and warm under her toes after the cold, wet stone of the bridge. Achoo! Oh, excuse me. In the middle of the room, a redwood table stood in solitary splendor. Oh my goodness, I'm going to sneeze again. Zoe hair. In the middle of the room, a redwood table stood in solitary splendor, its silver legs ending in silver, three-toed feet. On its rich, polished surface, there were 3 items, arranged in a line. A small metal case, about the size of Lirael's palm, a set of what looked like metal panpipes, and a book, bound in deep blue leather with silver clasps. The table, or the items on it, were clearly the focal point for the magic, for the dandelion lights swarmed thickest there, creating an effect like luminous fog. "Off you go, then," said the dog, sitting back on her haunches. "That looks like what we've come for." "What do you mean?" asked Lirael suspiciously, drawing a series of deep and calming breaths. She felt reasonably safe now, but there was a lot of magic in the room that she didn't know, and she couldn't even begin to guess what it was for, or where it came from. And she could still taste free magic at the back of her mouth and on her tongue, a cold iron tang that just wouldn't go away. "The doors opened for you, the path lit up for you. The guardians here didn't destroy you," said the dog, nuzzling Lirael's open hand with her cold, damp nose. She looked up at Lirael knowingly and added, "Whatever's on that table must be meant for you, which equally means it's not meant for me. So I'm going to sit down here, or lie down, actually. Wake me up when it's time to go." With that, the dog stretched luxuriously, yawned, and lowered herself to the carpet. Comfortably settled on her side, she swished her tail a few times, and then, to all appearances, fell deeply asleep. "Oh, dog!" exclaimed Lirael. "You can't sleep now! What'll I do if something bad happens?" The dog opened one eye and said, with the least possible jaw movement, "Wake me up, of course." Lirael looked down at the sleeping dog, then over at the table. The Stilken was the worst thing she'd encountered in the library, but she'd found other dangerous things over the past few years. Felled creatures, old charter spells that had unraveled or become unpredictable, mechanical traps, even poisoned book bindings. All these were the regular hazards of a librarian's life, but nothing like what she faced now. Whatever these items were, they were guarded more heavily and with stranger and more powerful magic than anything Lirael had ever seen. Whatever magic was concentrated here was very old, too, Lirael realized. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, the carpet, the table, even the air in the room, were saturated with layer upon layer of charter marks, some of them at least 1,000 years old. She could feel them moving everywhere, mixing and changing. When she closed her eyes for a moment, the room felt almost like a charter stone, a source of charter magic rather than just a place upon which many spells had been cast. But that was impossible, at least as far as she knew. Suddenly made dizzy by the thought, Lirael opened her eyes again. Charter marks flowed against her skin, into her breath, swam in her blood. Free magic floated between the marks. The dandelion light spread out towards her like tendrils, wrapped gently around her wrist, and slowly reeled her in towards the table. The magic and the lights made her feel lightheaded and dazed, as if she'd woken from the final moments of a dream. Lirael fought the feeling for a moment, but it was a pleasant feeling, not at all threatening. She let the sleeping dog lie and walked forward slowly, swathed in light. Then she was suddenly at the table, with no memory of crossing the intervening space. Her hands were resting on the cool, polished surface of the table. As could be expected of a second assistant librarian, she reached for the book first, her fingers touching the silver clasp that held it shut as she read the title embossed in silver type upon the spine. The Book of Remembrance and Forgetting. Lirael undid the clasp, feeling charter magic there too, noting the marks that chased each other across the silver surface and deep in the metal itself. Marks of binding and closing, burning and destruction. But the clasp was open by the time she realized what the marks were, and she stood unharmed. Carefully, she turned back the cover and the title page, the crisp, leaf-thin paper turning easily. There were charter marks inside the pages, put there at the time of the paper's making, and free magic, constrained and channeled into place. Magic of both kinds lay in the boards and leather of the cover, and even in the glue and stitching of the spine. Most of all, there was magic and power in the type. In the past, Lirael had seen similar, if less powerful books, like In the Skin of a Lion. You could never truly finish reading such a book, for the contents changed at need, at the original maker's whim, or to suit the phases of the moon or the patterns of the weather. Some of the books had contents you couldn't even remember till certain events might come to pass. Invariably, this was an act of kindness from the creator of the book, for such contents invariably dealt with things that would be a burden to recall with every waking day. The lights danced around Lirael's head as she began to read, making shadow patterns from her hair flicker across the page. She read the first page, then the next, then the one after. Soon, Lirael had finished the first chapter, as her hand reached out every few minutes to turn the page. Behind her, the dog's heavy, sleepy breath seemed to match the slow rhythm of the turning pages. Hours later, or even days, for Lirael had lost all knowledge of time, she turned what seemed to be the last page and closed the book. It latched itself shut, the silver clasp snapping. Lirael drew back at the snap, but didn't leave the table. Instead, she picked up the panpipes, 7 small tubes of silver, ranging in size from the length of her little finger to a little shorter than her hand. She held the pipes up to her lips, but didn't blow. They were much more than they appeared. The book had told her how the pipes were made, and how they should be used, and Lirael now knew that the charter marks that moved in the silver were only a veneer on the free magic that lurked within. She touched each of the pipes in turn, smallest to largest, and whispered their names to herself before putting the instrument back on the table. Then she picked up the last item, the small metal case. This was silver too, etched with pleasing decorations as well as charter marks. The latter were similar to those on the book, all threatening retribution if the box were opened by someone not of the true blood. It didn't say which particular blood, but Lirael thought that if the book opened for her, the case would too. She lightly touched the catch, recoiling a little as she felt the heat of free magic blazing within. The case remained shut. Briefly, she thought that the book might be wrong, or she might have misread the marks, or not have the right blood. She shut her eyes and firmly pressed the catch. Nothing terrible happened, but the case shivered in her hand. Lirael opened her eyes. The case had sprung open into 2 halves, hinged in the middle, like a small mirror to be balanced on a shelf or table. Lirael opened it completely and placed it, V-shaped, on the table. One side of it was silver, but the other was something she couldn't describe. Where the bright reflective surface of a mirror would be, there was a non-reflective rectangle of nothing, a piece of absolute darkness, a shape of something made from the total absence of light. The Book of Remembrance and Forgetting called it Dark Mirror, and Lirael had read, at least in part, how it might be used. But the dark mirror would not work in this room, or in any part of the world of life. It could be used only in death, and Lirael had no intention of going there, even if the book professed to show her how to come back. Death was the province of the Abhorsen, not the Clare, even though the particular use of the dark mirror could possibly be related to the Clare's gift of sight. Lirael snapped shut the dark mirror and laid it on the table, but her fingers still rested upon it. She stood there like that for a full minute, thinking. Then she picked it up and slipped it into her left waistcoat pocket to join the company of a pen nib, a length of waxed string, and a seriously foreshortened pencil. After another moment of hesitation, she picked up the panpipes and put them in her right pocket with the clockwork mouse. Finally, she picked up the Book of Remembrance and Forgetting and tucked it into the front of her waistcoat. She walked back to the disreputable dog. It was time for the 2 of them to have a very serious talk about what was going on. The book, The dark mirror and the panpipes had lain here for 1,000 years or more, waiting in the dark for someone the Claire of long ago had known would come, waiting in the dark for a woman named Lirael, waiting for her. And that is the end of chapter 22. So that was good. And apparently that is what is on the front of this book. So now you can see the little mirror, the panpipes, and the book of remembrance and forgetting. So I will post the next chapter tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am determined to get it done on time, so I'm going to start reading even earlier here on out. But I hope you enjoyed that reading. If you did, I would love it if you would like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. If you're celebrating today, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you eat something good, and that today is easy for you. And I'll see you tomorrow. So take care, and as always, may your magic manifest. Bye.